Hello everyone, this is Karen Grace Clark. I'm the Program Director at Gold Lactation Online Conference. I'm sitting here today talking with Cynthia Good Mojab. We are discussing her upcoming presentation at Gold Lactation Online Conference titled Unpacking the Invisible Diaper Bag of White Privilege, an Overview of Racial Inequities in Breastfeeding Support. Cynthia, tell me, why are you interested in racial inequities, especially with respect to how that relates to breastfeeding?
Well, anytime you look at breastfeeding rates across different racial groups, you can see that there are differences in how these different communities are initiating breastfeeding and continuing with breastfeeding. And of course, the impact of that is substantial. We all know that there are significant and numerous risks for not breastfeeding, for exposure to infant formula. And so by definition, the fact that there are groups that are breastfeeding more or less is of interest because these aren't just abstract numbers. These are real live families. These are real live babies, and the numbers that we see translate into the realities of their lives. Why are those rates different? Why do some groups have lower breastfeeding initiation rates? And how is that then impacting that community in a very real sort of way? For me, understanding racial inequities is really a part of cultural competence. We have a society, many societies, that their basic, a part of their basic nature is racism or fear of another, culturally different group. And so many of our fields that somehow support breastfeeding have codes of conduct, professional ethics, that mandate the development of cultural competence. So anytime you have a society in which racism is occurring and racial inequities in access to health care, racial inequities in health behaviors are occurring, then that's part of any lactation specialist's job to become aware of what is going into that and how their work can help combat that. So it's for me just a basic part of being an IBCLC is to be learning more about this topic and trying to find ways to help others be more aware and help policies be changed as whatever is needed to help change this situation away from this very long-standing pattern.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. I agree with you. As an IBCLC in private practice, I myself actually work primarily with women here in Canada of a First Nations background, and I understand these racial inequities quite intimately because the cultures that they have within the First Nations community are very different, and the challenges that they face are very different than what people that do not have that background with what they're faced with. So it is a very, very interesting topic for myself personally as well, and I'm very excited that you're presenting this at Gold. Now, the aspect of unpacking the invisible diaper bag of white privilege is a very interesting sounding title for a presentation. How did you select that title, Cynthia?
Well, I can thank a woman named Peggy McIntosh for inspiring that title. She's done a lot of work in the area of women's studies, and part of her work was really deconstructing male privilege and getting a good understanding and teaching about it. And in the course of her work with male privilege, that because you're male, you are more likely to have a greater education or a higher salary, what have you. As she explored that, she started understanding and seeing more that the fact that her skin was white granted her similar privilege that she didn't earn by her own effort. It was just because her skin was white. And so she wrote a great essay. It's actually part of a larger paper, but it's been reproduced many times as a smaller essay and it's called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack of White Privilege. And somewhere along the way I thought, wow, that just so applies to the field of breastfeeding also. A mom, based on the color of her skin has just, it's not an even playing field. How you are able to mother and the support that you receive is not identical across racial groups. So I basically kind of applied her concepts to the more narrowed down experience of mothering and breastfeeding.
Again, you're just so driving home a message that's so important and personal to myself as well. And I think this is really going to be something that people need to hear, that, white, Caucasian, European-based healthcare providers really need to hear, as well as those, from minorities. We really do need to learn how to understand, culture and racial inequities and white privilege. I agree with you 100%, Cynthia, and I think that this is going to be a really eye-opening presentation. I just have one other question for you. We're just talking about giving a little bit of a taste of some of the things that people, might hear in this presentation, but why do you think that they should listen to the presentation as a whole? Why do you think healthcare professionals, need to learn about these racial inequities? Does it really matter in terms of how people receive their health care?
Yeah, I certainly do believe that it's very important to learn about this kind of information, not just knowledge-wise, but also skill set-wise. What happens is it's quite natural. Everyone has their own, family that they grew up in, and their own subculture within, their own nation that they grew up in, and their own mainstream national culture. And it's totally understandable and human to bring our own perspective and experience along with us into our work. The challenge that very natural phenomenon poses is that not everyone has those same experiences, has those same opportunities, has those same values, makes the same meanings out of things that we do, has the same access to resources and power, and so if we don't broaden our understanding and recognize that the playing field is not always even, then the services that we provide they'll be good for people who are like us, who have similar opportunities, similar access to resources, similar privileges, but we won't know how to provide services that match the needs and experiences of people who are not like us. And since the field of lactation in many countries is so dominated by people with white skin, that makes a big difference in how overall breastfeeding support happens. When you have an entire field that is kind of skewed towards one set of experiences, perspectives, values, privilege, opportunities, then that impacts how service is provided and who is most comfortable receiving those services, whose needs are met by those services, who has access to get into that profession. So we just have so much work to do as a field to really start understanding in a really broad way how racial inequities are impacting or are playing out in the field of breastfeeding support. And I think it's very exciting. A lot of organizations in the field of breastfeeding are becoming more and more aware of this and continuing work on it if they've been at it for a long time, or beginning work on it if it's really something they haven't addressed before. So it's very, very exciting times for anyone in the field of breastfeeding support.
Yes, indeed, I would agree with you 100%. I know there's a lot of buzz going on right now in the lactation field for sure, and sometimes it's some of these healthcare specialties like lactation or something else along those lines that can actually cause a ripple effect to other healthcare specialties and even just healthcare as a whole. And I feel that we're on the cusp of something really important here. So thank you, Cynthia, for being part of Gold this year and giving two really awesome presentations that I know everybody is going to learn a lot from. It has, as always, been wonderful talking with you, and I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you so much, Karen Grace. I'm very glad to be part of Gold.